Hey Jonah, it's Dr. Scott. I have some feedback for you on your Essay 2 draft. Just as a reminder, I'm taking a look at your thesis statement, your ability to use details from the murals, and from your research to support that thesis statement. I'm also looking at organization and transitions, and when I say organization, I mean like your ability to not just like group ideas together, but to have a reason for why you're locating ideas in the place that you have them in your essay. And finally, I'm taking a look at how you integrate sources. So I'm going to give you some feedback on some of those items and just kind of go through and note a few of the things that I saw when I was reading your draft. I have some notes over to the side. These are just kind of scribbles to me to remind myself what I need to talk to you about. So in the first paragraph, I think we're in the first paragraph, and there's this weird like center aligning thing that's going on in your essay, which is kind of confusing. So get everything left aligned and indent that first line so we know where the paragraphs are. But in this first paragraph, like I'm not sure where the quote ends here. I think it ends right at that sentence, but I'm not quite sure. Oh, you also need to tell us where you got that information from. It needs to be included. If it's the documentary. I think it's Lorenz, like Lorenz Productions. I think that was his name. Would do that, and then at the end, the first thing that should show up on your works cited list is Lorenz. I forget his first name, and then it's like the title of the documentary, and the production information for the documentary is needed in there as well. The introduction, in a few places in your essay, there's it's kind of confusing, like how you move between ideas. Like, so you kind of end. It looks like this is the thesis statement, and then this sentence is. I wasn't sure why we were going from the thesis statement to this idea here. I think that this is interesting, but I just don't know if it's in the right place for this paragraph or for the essay. I think probably the biggest issue that you'll need to address in the revision, and I feel like I need to say too, I was worried about you in this assignment because I know you were on the struggle bus there, but you actually have a really solid draft, Jonah. Like, you should be proud of this. I think you've done a good job. But the one big issue that you'll need to address is making stronger connections to your thesis statement in your body paragraph. So you have these details later on in the paragraph, and it's like, okay, so how are these related to the thesis statement? I think it's also helpful to begin your paragraphs, and I think you're beginning a paragraph here. Again, indenting can be helpful with that, but it doesn't suggest how the paragraph is going to help you support the thesis. It's not connected to the thesis statement at all. It just says they both do a great job bringing the murals to life, and your thesis is a lot stronger than just saying that the murals are brought to life. So get that first sentence hinting at the connection between this paragraph and the paper's overall focus, or the paper's thesis statement. Sorry, it's like 8:30, man. I'm sleepy. That's what happens when you're like 43. All right. I like the argument that you've got in this paragraph, that we're supposed to take this work seriously. It's like somber. I think that's really solid. You have a tendency to use pretty fluffy words like thing or something. There's always a more descriptive word than those, and thing is fine for like conversational talk, speaking, but it's like when you're doing more formal work, being as specific as you can is really needed. So something better than thing or something is needed there. Again, I really like where that paragraph is going. I think one thing that you have done really well is like you've transitioned between paragraphs really well. There are places within your paragraphs where we'll probably need to talk about how effective you've transitioned between ideas within your paragraphs. But between paragraphs, like, you do a solid job of explaining those connections, and you should be proud of that there. I think you're kind of repeating yourself in some of these earlier sentences. It feels like you're taking a couple stabs at trying to explain what the paragraph is going to do, and I don't think you need all of them. This is a place where I'm seeing a lack of connection between your details and what you're trying to say that the details are doing. So here we have, as you take a closer look at the mural and the people's facial expression in the mural, you can see that most of the people you can see have a blank face, and what I mean by blank face is that they're really not showing any emotion. No one is smiling or laughing. They're all just doing their job. We have a lot of detail here about blank faces, and this is the only payoff that we have. They're just doing their job. There's got to be more than that. There needs to be a bit more explanation there that kind of says, all right, I've given you these details about blank looks on people's faces. We're not, I mean, what does it say, though, like, when it's not about the people doing the work, it's about the work itself? And that kind of seems like what you're saying here with these murals. So there needs to be a fair bit more explanation. You may need to kind of even cut down on some of this discussion that repeats itself about blank faces and put more of your effort into explaining what's significant about that. I think you have a new paragraph here, I think, the body language paragraph. Like this source that's kind of describing body language. I think that's kind of interesting. And you kind of set it up and you talk about it afterwards. So solid job integrating that source. You do have a comma splice here where you got two sentences that are combined with just a comma. You need something a little bit more than that, but that's not that big a deal. And here you've got a trifecta. You've got three somethings in one sentence. So you might think I'm nitpicking here, but I hope what you're getting from this is like you've actually got a pretty solid paper, because I wouldn't be harping on you about a comma splice and about the repetition of the word something if I didn't think you were on the right path. So I don't think there's not a rewrite that's needed here. I do think that there's some cutting that needs to be done in places and some further explanation of yourself in some of those places, and I just talked about that just a little bit ago. But I think tightening up some language and explaining yourself a bit more, integrating some transitions into your paper, and I think you've got a pretty solid essay here. Later in this paragraph, though, we have some details here, and we don't get much explanation of what's going on. Like, why do those details matter? You're not really kind of interpreting them at this point. So, again, I was pretty worried about you when you were drafting this, or when you were talking about the thesis statement about a week and a half ago. But you've come a long way, and you should be proud, Jonah. This is pretty good stuff. All right, that's my feedback. If you got questions, need to come chat with me, do that. I look forward to speaking with you about this essay, and I will talk to you soon.